people may ask me, well, before I get into this, I've done a lot of evangelism and ministry in different kinds of capacities, and I don't like to have my name on things for very deliberate reasons, and I like to be in the trenches. I've never seen this viral moment occur in life. What to me, the best way to do it is to work through individuals and get the individuals. In other words, these people to be your seedlings, these people to be your disciples, and God's disciples at the same time, and get them to mature and get a lot of irons in the fire and get things moving in different areas at the same time. Because if everything around you that you do is that you're really trying to put together is reproductive, that's good. I get so much flack for different things. I'll never see a viral moment in my life, but it's because there are a lot of people that don't like me very much, but that's okay. So if you basically, all you have to do is invest in people and invest in the soil and get things growing. And I was in, and the prime, this moment I got to shine was the 10 years that I spent in Los Angeles. 10 years, I would go out and I would just make my point to get to know all of the people and leaders, particularly in each community. So I would get to know the leaders in the Chinese communities, or some of them, not all of them. It's really hard to know everybody, but I'd get to know a few people, and I would spin off from there, and I would start working with people, and I would try to build rapport and get to know about their about them, and try to relate to them and communicate to them in a very loving way that doesn't criticize who they are, because you can't criticize somebody's culture or religion without attacking their family, because that's what it ultimately really is. It's an affront to them personally, and the best way to do things is to get them to probe in thought and questions, show them, love them, build a relationship, and then let them see how things are. And that's what I would do. Is say I was working with the homeless people. I even did a documentary on the homeless, and then I had where I interviewed lots of homeless people and talked with them about their situation and stuff. And then I did another thing I would do is I worked with a lot of the other communities. I worked with a lot of people in business community. I worked with a lot of people in different business communities. I worked with many ethnic communities, and I worked with I did work with some people in entertainment, but I was a lot more working with a lot of the up and coming fast entrepreneurs. Some of these people are just unknown and won't be known, because these people know how to get things done and do things, and you can learn a lot from them, and hopefully they can, if they become converts, then they become influencers. And most none of those people are over 45, and they all have, most of them have multiple private jets, and they own things and businesses in multiple countries, and they have very good investments, but it's because the way they do things. So you can learn an awful lot about how to get things done, and I'm not so interested in profiting, because I worked with a lot of people like that. That's how I got to know some of them, as I did work for them. But what I would say is that you have to be in that sphere where you're just trying to figure things out, and you have to learn from your mistakes, and you have to adjust accordingly and try to learn more and more about how to be somebody's friend. If we're supposed to be walking in Jesus' footsteps as disciples, and we're supposed to be reproducing disciples, and we're also supposed to be being like Jesus, we're supposed to show lots of love and empathy, and we're also supposed to be people's friends. And the thing is about this whole thing is that Jesus didn't go to the Samaritan and say, "You need to become a Nazarene." No, he didn't do that. He didn't attack her Samaritan faith. He didn't attack. He didn't attack the sinners mostly on a personal level. He didn't go after them necessarily. I mean, if there was some really deep sin in their life, like adultery or something, he would encourage them and try to, in a positive way, encourage them to make different decisions. But it was never, unless you were a religious hypocrite. If you were a religious person, religious people were the people that Jesus hated the most. It was the Billy Sundays of the world that Jesus would really flip tables and call them all kinds of offensive names and spit at them. It wasn't the dirty sinners and the pagans, or other people. Another group of people that I've really built a lot of relationships with, and I have a lot of very good friends with, are people in the gay community. I think that the biggest mistake that evangelicals make is to go out, and I don't identify as an evangelical anymore, but is to go out and try to immediately attack somebody's social life and romantic life without knowing anything about their life or understanding anything about them and having any empathy for it, or and just be there just to condemn and scold and tell them they're wrong. There's a lot of gay Christians, even ones who were married, who still live together, and some of them just choose abstinence. And that isn't so unusual. Lots of people have roommates and stuff that they care about and stuff. But these people just were born a certain way. And people who want to argue, no one's born a certain way like that. Well, really, what about all of the mental conditions that people are born with that make them violent? But, if you want to say it's bad, if you really want to take that position, let's look at all these other things, The reality is that DNA changes all the time, and it's very subject to our environment. That's why the Caucasian people in Europe are in Europe, and why black people who have darker skin are in Africa. It's because we environmentally change. It's all a part of human adaptation. Now, the thing is, and it's genetic. If you don't believe me, then if that wasn't true, then black people would be having white babies in America without having any mixed blood. So, good luck with that. So, but the thing is we have to realize that we need to overcome evil with good, and we need to show who we are by love. If we're not loving, we don't know God. So we can't show people God if we're not God. If we're not like God, you're not in that sense. But anyhow, what I'm saying, you cannot show people that you are who God is without giving love, and because then you're not showing God. You're not showing who He is, and ultimately, that's what we have to do. And it's very hard for some people to love people that aren't like them, don't look like them, don't talk like them, don't live like them, and come from different backgrounds. Very difficult thing for us to do as people. But it's not an insurmountable thing. And these kinds of relational things build things. And what I do beyond that is I have lots of there are many online things that I have out there. There's some things in person that are still going on in some different places. They're from a distance. And there are online meetings that occur periodically in a couple of formats. And there's this which I'm trying to start for more of a more in-depth thing of what I'm trying to achieve, and that's not light, it's more heavy. It's the rich version, the one that will leave some people a little bit sick in the stomach and other people wanting more. So that's kind of what we're doing. Now, I saw this a lot when I was in LA, more than I had before, because there are a lot of people trying to evangelize in LA, but it has one of the lowest ratios of practicing Christians in the world, or even Christians for that matter. Um, um, and the reason is, and people think of these big churches in Southern California, think, well, first off, most of them, they're pretty much mostly in the suburbs. The other thing is that, there's 21 million people in the LA metropolitan area. So if you had 1 million Christians, there are probably 3 million and some change of people who actually attend church. That's enough to fill up some pretty big churches. And then you have a lot of little churches still, and those big churches keep feeding off of it. What really happens is they keep feeding off of the small dying churches where people get fed up and they want to go and they just want to be able to sit down and have a big famous pastor who they can listen to until they die, and then take their kids with them who are living in their house because none of them are professionals there anymore. Those people are far the few in the Christian faith, unfortunately. There are still some out there, but the thing is that's what happens. And the thing is, those people are disconnected from the current culture there, because it changes very quickly there, and it's not just from people who've been there forever. No, because close to 40% of the population was born in another country there. And then the other thing is you have people coming from other parts of the country. So 60-70% of the population was not born in Southern California, in particular in areas like Los Angeles, and so it's a rapidly changing place. I was in a neighborhood where the prices of property went up very quickly, and within a year it went from being predominantly a Latino community to being an upscale community, and it became very quickly to be more white, Asian, and upscale African American, and they're starting very quickly, beginning to outnumber them very quickly within a year, and because the house prices went from $230,000 to $850,000 very quickly, and now they're like $960,000 in that neighborhood for a 2-bedroom craftsman home. So it changes very quickly because the kind of people that come into influence, because when cities become international, and they will all be international within 10 years, if you're still a significant size city in the United States of any kind, over 150,000. And the people who come in usually have 3 to 5 times the income of the people that lived there before, and then they have even more savings. So they just take over very quickly. But so what happens is then you have a situation where people are living off of their equity, and their kids are living with them, and because of their living off their equity, when they die, their kids and the parents, it basically displaces people, and then they go to other states. Like for a while they were going to Arizona and Texas, and then the prices went up there. So now you're going to see them going into other areas like Idaho and the Dakotas and Florida, and Florida's starting to get more expensive because of New York. So then it's Georgia and the Carolinas, and that's kind of where it's heading. And it's enough there's enough people in these places to filter out into the rest of the country, and it'll change the rest of the country. And then when those people filter it out, as they start to, at the same time you start seeing other people coming in who make it the international city from other places. Now, so what happens is that you become like, you have a castle mentality, and that is that you view the new culture as the invasive culture, and you don't learn how to interact with them and how to bring them into your fold, because you approach it with the idea they have to become exactly like us and give up on everything. And then there's some people who just want them to leave, but then you get those people in. But the reality is you don't need to change them. You don't need to have separate services. You just need to do what Jesus did and love them, and that's the answer. Because then there's the bottom line is you're only somebody's enemy if you fight them. You can be their enemy all day you want, but and eventually they'll get tired of fighting somebody who's not fighting them, and it'll just kind of dip off. It gives them no place to go. But and that's kind of what you have to do in somebody wants to fight you in a ministry standpoint when you're trying to reach out to people is just keep loving them and just keep rolling with the punches and say, okay. And you don't do this stupid narcissist thing, or not narcissist, sarcastic thing, say, well, Jesus loves you. You don't do that. No, you just say something nice about him, talk about, give him a compliment, and just move on. But we want to fight. You look at our church splits and things, family dynamics, and everybody who's been around ministry knows that Christians' families are always calling the pastor at 2 a.m. Needing somebody to pull two spouses apart. It happens all the time, and it's a big problem. And a lot of it's because of the toxicity and the way we have this whole polarized thinking that's all about. It's all tactical. It's all tactile defensive, and it's all built around certain issues. And some of these issues aren't even really Christian the way we think they are if we actually dissect them. And we have to understand this when we do our evangelistic approach to make sure that we don't project toxicity, project things that we don't want others to be, and ask questions and just be there to people. I would go in and I would talk to the homeless people. I don't give them money. I don't give them food per se, but I do something better. I invite them to come with me and sit down at a restaurant, whether it's fast food or whatever, and have a meal with me and order whatever they want and sit down and talk with me, and we'll ask them questions about their life and try to give them some advice and share and eventually start sharing Jesus with them a little bit, and it's that kind of thing that really works with people and really makes a big difference. It's not this whole thing, you need to go into the shelter and you need to sit down and read a Bible and pray with me, God damn it, or I'm going to slap you in the face. That's not how it works. You gotta go down to them at their level and get down in the dirt with them and talk with them. And if they're on the high level, you've got to go up there and you gotta dress up and sit down there and talk with them. You gotta be a little bit of a chameleon. You gotta be a little bit of a loving person, and you just gotta be willing to do whatever you're going to do. And just being somebody's friend is going to go an awful long way. I think that getting people to question what they think, and you look at everything from a critical thinking standpoint and understand all of the dynamics is really, really helpful to anybody in finding truth in anything, and as much truth as they can possibly find. To some people, call this, I've used this only a few times because I normally don't mess with the Mormons very much, but I call this tact out Mormon the Mormons, and you need to study their belief system before you interact with them, not from Christian apologists, but no, you go to their sources, their own websites, their own books. You want to read all their books, all their documents, and all of their theological commentaries, so you know where they're coming from. You want to know some of their history too. So that you can relate to them and you know how to help them basically be inquisitive in the correct areas, but you don't want to simply say that you're wrong about this or wrong about that, or you need to question specifically this or this is wrong. You just need to ask questions that are going to provoke questions in the right areas, and what you can do though is if you're explaining what you believe, because one of the best ways to do this is just get them to tell you their story and say, or tell them a little bit about yourself, and then ask them what they believe or what they think. But what you really need to do though is find things sometimes in their documents that teach Christian doctrine, but then also contradict other things they teach in their theology and stuff. So, as most religions have contradictory stuff, Christianity seems to, and it does for some forms of theology, and I think it does for certain with something. They do a lot of gymnastics, a lot of these different groups and apologists do, to try to cover up some of this stuff. But unless you understand certain things, you're really in a pickle, and you're always going to be trying to explain this, that, or the other, because inerrancy, the way most people understand it, is just wrong. A lot of the fundamentalism is just wrong. because they're looking at everything as an anachronism. In fact, that's the Achilles heel of most false religions, is that the religions were built around anachronisms, and but the thing is if you understand the periods and things that were going on, it's not so much true in an actual Christian religion, but a lot of people try to impose their own ideas about things. And that's something that can be troubling for you when you deal with people who do critically think or have looked at things in Christianity. And they'll be like, but this is this way, because you're defending something that you shouldn't even have to defend, because you're looking at it from the wrong picture. That's helped me. Atheists who try to argue from a scientific or philosophical standpoint have a very hard time dealing with me because of that. And I don't fight with them, but I explain things in a way that they've never seen them explain, and they can't really argue with it the way they usually do. So they kind of are perplexed, and it causes them to ask questions, and that's very important. But we have to build bridges, not walls, and it's really all about this is a pandemic, but philosophically holding your hand out or your arms out, and explaining things in a loving way and provoking questions, and not going for some jugular moment where you attack everything and destroy everything they believe. That's never going to work. You're just going to really offend them because it's everybody they know and everything they've ever known, and it's that sensitivity that helped. And even Jesus used it, except when he was dealing with religious hypocrites. And there's a reason for that, and that's another video. So that's kind of the bottom line of it all. And you can use a lot of productivity apps and things to help keep track of things and people and stuff. And there's a lot of online tools to help you do online ministry. The pandemic is really a gift because the world's going into this anyway with this online thing. I think some parts of the country that haven't developed as much are a little bit behind, and it might be a while before it has a lot of fruit. But when it does, it's quicker than 30 years, like some places are behind to catch up because of how quickly things can move. But that's kind of where you need to go. You need to get out there, and you need to exploit every learning tool you can to make yourself better, and communication is very important. So that's where I'm kind of going to leave this.